Okay, so we've done color correction to the three main parts of the head. I'm going to do a tiny bit of targeted color correction. It's looking really good, but I want to see if I can get some weird kind of spots of other colors in the horned lizard. And so to do that, I go to image adjustments and hue saturation, but instead of making the range the whole thing, the master, I'm going to look for just the cyan. And I'm going to really intensify it, see if there's any cyan in there at all. Really lighten it up. And it doesn't look like there's really any cyan at all, which is disappointing. But I can try that with the green, because I want little flecks of another color. And because it's photo reference, it should be in there. Come on, give me something. So hue saturation, targeted. Okay, now let me go for, let's see if there's any blue. So this image is, I'm trying to get as much out of these as possible. And I have changed it, but it's just not very perceptible. So instead, what I can do is this. I can duplicate it. And then, this is another form of internal compositing. Go to hue saturation and really change the hue. Oh, you know what? When something's not working the way you expect it to work, it's usually because you have a selection. And that should have changed the hue. So when it doesn't do that, I think I wasn't seeing change because I have something selected somewhere. So to undo that, I can click on the lasso and just click anywhere, or I can hit Command D, and that will deselect. So now let me see if those tricks work, because I'd be surprised if there was no cyan in this at all. What is going on? I'm on the right layer. That's true, I don't see a whole lot of cyan. But let's see if I can change the hue. Go to master. There, that's why. Change the hue. Okay. So I didn't have a selection. It just remembered my range from before. So there isn't a whole lot of blue, cyan, or green in that image to manipulate. So instead, I'm going to duplicate it and then change that. Change it overall, the master hue, to something that has little hints in the rest of it. The orange, the yellow. Then say okay. Maybe even saturate it up a little bit. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my magic wand. So that's underneath the lasso tool. I'm going to have it so it's unchecked on contiguous. I'm going to find a tolerance of 10 is fine. I'm going to feather it with about 2 pixels so it's a little soft. And I'm just going to click on the color and then maybe hold down shift and click on another color. And I'm picking kind of light yellows and oranges, right? And then just little flecks of color. And then I'm going to hit Command J and duplicate those and then turn it off. So you can see I have these little flecks of color. Not a whole lot. I could have, if I don't feel like I have enough, I can widen my tolerance, right? Make it like 30. Use the magic wand. Contiguous is turned off. There we go. Hit Command J. So now I've got more of that. Turn on my base layer, and now I can use what I just copied delete the overall one, and now I can just adjust those little spots. Now, it's important to note that this is still compositing. It feels like I'm just painting a texture and different colored spots. But that's not what I'm doing. Instead, I selected a range of the pixels that was already there. Right? And that allows me then to play with them. I can play with their opacity. And then I can even do it again. I can duplicate it and now push it towards green because I've got the red, or even purple.
I'm still kind of confused on how you selected only those color pictures. Like I watched it, but I still don't quite.
Yeah, so the magic wand tool selects pixels that are similar to each other, right? So it's how we selected like all the white pixels around our black line art. So it just selected the color range of these particular pixels, and then I just changed that color range. So now I have it as yellow, and so now I can use my eraser and I can just hit it in a few places with a soft edge. So it's a mixture of yellow and reds that come through. Now that's pretty nitpicky, but it shows the potential of internal compositing, right? And now let me just fix this horn. And you guys, the reason I'll demo it for you is you'll see like the little things I get hung up on because they become interesting, right? I expect that to happen for your projects too. It's not always about being super efficient. It's about playing around. And sometimes things won't work out. And that's true for me as well. But then it teaches you something about how you can use it. So for this extra horn element, so I already have 4 different references just in this head. So that's how important the head is to me. I'm going to warp it, but if I warp it too much, it's going to get really soft. But that still looks pretty good. And there is a filter adjustment that can help sharpen it a little bit, just give it more contrast. So I might do that. So I go to filter and sharpen. There aren't that many filters we'll use, but sometimes we'll use smart sharpen. Now the computer cannot make up pixels, right? But what it can do is detect when there's a lot of contrast between pixels. And that's kind of defining an edge. And that's what's called radius. And so you can overdo it and then it'll just look really noisy. Like every pixel has an outline around it, basically. So that's too much, right? That's too much. But if it's just looking a little blurry compared to everything else, I can play with the radius and the amount and get it to match a little bit better. Okay, then I'm going to use my soft-edged eraser at 100%. Get rid of that hard edge. Right. Then I'm going to play with levels adjustments. Then I'm going to play with color balance. So it's a slightly different order where I do hue saturation first for the big color change and then the subtle color change at the end. A little different than what we did for the landscape. Okay. And then I think I'm going to, whoops, distort it just to widen this base a little bit more so it works with the profile. Good. All right. So I've got my head design. I have a slight internal edge here that I can clean up just using my lasso. And I might have to go to a slightly smaller eraser. Starts at 100%. And then I'm going to dodge and burn. So like I said, the head, whoops, still on the eraser. I want to first dodge it. An exposure of less than 30. Soft edge brush, large enough to see. Because the light source is different, right? The angle of the light is different. So I want to dodge it on the top. And burn it on the bottom. Okay, so I've got my head. Now that I've got my head, I can put those all in a folder together. I'm not merging them, I'm just putting them in a folder together. So it's the top layers, all of these. So I select them all by holding Shift. I click on the little folder, and then I can name that folder the head. Right, so now.
Wait, so you select them using Shift, and then how do you put them in a folder?
So once they're selected, once you have multiple layers selected, you just click on the folder icon and it will put them all into a folder. And now I've labeled that folder head, so if I turn it off, the whole head disappears, right? But it still is made of its component parts. You just open the folder and you can see all the layers that make it up. So now on the Ferrari factory floor, we have built the engine. We're pretty pleased with it. And then we can just use the move tool like a big crane and move this engine into place when it's time. And I can use Control T, even though they're separate layers, and I can manipulate all those layers together, right? Which is very, very helpful. But why keep them as separate layers? We're going to do that till the very end, just in case we see something. Like if it really starts to bug me, that really does look like a black eye. So let me go to that layer and let me dodge, just those shadows. So it doesn't look quite so deep. So sometimes you still want control over each layer. Otherwise, I'd be dodging all the layers together if I merged it. All right, so I've finished the head. Now, I've got it in a folder. Now I have to attach it to a neck, right? So I can look at my different options. Bring this up and say, okay, does that neck work? It does, but that's not the gesture of my creature, right?